Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us at lunchtime for a change. Usually we do this at night or very early in the morning, and we thought let's do a 12 o'clock lunchtime in South Africa kind of session. If you are tuned in from somewhere else in the world, a very warm welcome as well. And it's really my privilege today to spend some time again with you, as well as with Adam Owen, who is going to be doing most of the talking today. And today we are definitely going to talk about how to design a financial planner. And this is all about putting together an effective training program, path, career development, journey, call it what you want. But that's really what today is all about. So with that, I'm going to ask Adam to switch on his video so that I can give him a warm South African welcome. Adam, warm welcome. This is not, as you said earlier before we started, this is not our first rodeo together. So a warm welcome and back for those that know you already. And just for those who don't, just a quick intro.
Good afternoon, Francois, and everybody from here in the UK. Great to be back. And so I look after financial planners here in the UK and their career development from classroom to boardroom. So we thought today we'd just have a chat and share some of the things that I've learned over all of that time that I've been helping advisors with their development, and also advising firms on how they can structure their development plans. So that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah, I'm very excited, and obviously we don't want to waste any time with this because we only have until we only have half an hour about. Just if you have any questions, you're welcome to send them through using the Q&A, and we will gladly answer your questions right at the end. There's quite a few things that Adam will be sharing with us, and I will be chatting to him about this. The main sort of outcome that we're looking for today's session is to understand how to design an engaging, which is very important, an engaging development plan for your financial planners. But also, as I mentioned in the marketing for today's session, is that even if you are just in your practice and you're just concerned with your own development, or even if you are it's just yourself in your FSP, there is still a lot of value that you're going to take from this. So how to put together a plan for yourself. So without any further ado, Adam, let's get sort of into the first part of this. And this is really that, when setting off in designing any kind of program, I think it's very important to be clear on sort of the outcome, and the way you want to design this is to help a planner to become who they want to become.
Yes, absolutely right. And I think it is so important because we sort of know generically what a financial planner is, and we know what our respective regulators would expect a financial planner to be. We also know, of course, what the consumer expects from a financial planner to some degree. But when you're designing a training program, do you want to churn out a series of people who fit a particular carbon copy, one size fits all approach to financial planning? Or do you want your training program and your development plans to actually create people and design processes, systems, skills, and behaviors that represent your firm? And there are a number of different ways that we can do that. And there's a number of different ways that we can design to create an outcome. And an outcome that actually then brings somebody in line with the cultural values of the business, but also in line with what you want to project to your consumer and to your customer. So that when a customer meets a new financial planner within the practice, they should really be meeting just an extension of your firm. So somebody that they might have met for the first time is just like somebody else and does the things that they would expect that they've met from the firm before. So within that, and to do that, Francois, I think there's a number of key points that we'd start with. But one of the big ones, and one of the first things, is to think about that vision, mission, values, and to think about how we really start on that process of really understanding and engaging with our trainees and anybody who's joining our business to communicate that to them.
And it's important, like if we don't know really where we're going and whether we fit into this, because I think a big part of this, I know having a vision is very important, having a clear direction of where you want to go, and sort of, are we all fighting the same fight? I think that's an important thing. But one of the most important aspects of this, if you want to look at values, we talk about the values of the business, the culture, even if you will, and then also the individual's personal values, because, you know, you can change a lot of things, but I think it's very hard to change things, you know, to adapt your values, things that are truly important to you, do away with that to fit in what is important for someone else, or in this case, what's important to a business. So if there's not alignment there right from the start, I guess that makes things very difficult.
It does, absolutely. And one of the, I'm approached often by firms will say, you know, help us design a development program for our teams. And they're often surprised that the first question I ask is, do you have a clear set of vision, mission, and value statements? And even if they have, I'll ask them to validate them. So we'll look at those values and we'll really do some exercises to understand whether or not the values that they've stated are real values that they live by, or are they brochure values that somebody in marketing has come up with, that they paint on their walls or have on their desktop screen, whatever it might be, but actually they just become part of the furniture. It's very easy for our vision, our mission and values just to blend into the background once we've done that initial big meeting. But if you've got a really great set of vision, mission and values, then you can use them almost as a de facto non-executive director for your firm. They can hold all of the decision making at every layer of your firm to account, because you can always ask, is the decision I'm about to make taking us closer to achieving our mission or taking us further away from it? Are we actually operating under our values with this decision? Are we breaching some of those values? So understanding them, validating them, embedding them, and then making sure that everybody really works to them and uses them on a day-to-day basis. That's when our vision, mission, and values can become something that's really powerful. And from that, what we're able to do is to expand out and to think, right, once we've got those in place, then we're designing an avatar or an archetype, if you will, for the type of financial advisor we want to produce. And so I'll then spend time asking a firm to look at, okay, the qualities that you want, that sort of secret sauce that really does make somebody's representing your firm rather than just a generic financial planner. What is it? What are the things that make the difference, that are really important to you? And from there, we've created our avatar, and everything can flow from that. If you've got a really clear picture of the type of financial planner you want to produce from a training program, then everything else just sort of works backwards from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And once you know where you're going, like, I don't know, I always use the same kind of example, but in our case in South Africa, for example, if I'm based in Johannesburg or Bloemfontein or Durban or anywhere, we all want to go to Cape Town. Usually that's usually the destination where everybody's headed. So if you want to go there, I mean, there are many different ways to get there. So if I can relate that back to saying, well, you have a clear vision of the kind of financial planner that you want to be, you know that you are you know the kind of financial plans you want to build for your business as well, and then obviously match those people. I think we'll talk maybe about recruitment later, I'm not sure, but that's an important point. But once you know that, to get there, I mean, there are many different ways to get to Cape Town. There are many different routes to get to Cape Town. So the next sort of step that is very important is to then go and decide on the route. Because maybe that financial planner has got, you know, slightly different needs or wants to take a slightly different approach. So keen to hear sort of your views on this, Adam, and how do we decide on a route for this financial planner?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that oftentimes it's, you know, we design on a progressional basis. So the big question, you know, if your end goal is to take somebody from scratch, from no experience in the profession, and to produce a competent, brilliant financial planner at the end of a development program, then what are they going to do in those early days when they can't go out and see clients? And that's the big question that a lot of firms are asking. Do we put them through an administrative process? So do they learn the basics, and they start from administration, move into maybe power planning, and then progress? Do we actually have a program that is specifically related to trainee financial planner, where the trainee will shadow other financial planners for the whole time? That might be a way of bringing things forward and accelerating a process. But also within some businesses, particularly small businesses, that transition model of moving through a job role, through admin to power planner to financial advisor, is actually really important to the business, because it's the way that they actually fill those roles over time. And, you know, some businesses just can't afford to have excess people sat in training, so they need to deploy them somewhere in the business whilst they're getting to where they want to get to. Now, that's not to say for any power planners that might be watching this that actually I see power planning as a progressional role to something else. Businesses need people who are really great in the roles that they do, who want to stay there and develop their skills to an exemplary level in those roles. But oftentimes with our financial planner, then trainee financial planners in particular, they want to get out there, they want to be doing that job. And so it's about understanding that dynamic as well. We see so many that get bored and lose interest, and maybe we lose them to the profession and they go and do something else because they're told that they're going to do one thing and it's not explained to them that actually they're going to have to spend time doing the basics. And let's be fair, the basics aren't always really exciting, but they're really important. And so it's making sure that we communicate that, and that's designed into the program. And then once we've designed it in, that we actually fulfill it. Nothing worse than breaking a promise and somebody feeling that they're not getting what is either contracted or is just in that psychological contract that they've been promised progression. So making sure that as an employer, you understand the route you want people to take, and then communicating that route really clearly, that's going to give us the best possible outcome.
Yeah, and that's an important point. So, another thing that's sort of coming to mind right now at this very second is that even if you go down this route and you start the journey, maybe somewhere down the line you realize that maybe this is not the route you want to be on, and surely we need to ensure that there are like some detours. At some point I may be on this journey to become a financial planner, and a year down the road I decide, no, I'd much rather be a paraplanner. Or, you know what, maybe admin and office management is my thing. And maybe, I still need some of this, but there's other things that maybe there should be detours off of this route as well. I mean, is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a massive fan. Oftentimes I'll be asked to help a firm produce a development program for a financial planner. But actually, it's really hard to do that in isolation, because you need those other roles. And so when you're designing, then you should design for each job role within the business. And normally there are 4 core job roles that I see a lot. There's the administrator, the power planner. There's a role that is a client support role that is sort of a hybrid, a little bit of power planner and a little bit of administrator. And then you've got your financial planner, and then maybe you've got other managerial roles and operations and all sorts of other stuff. But those 4 core roles, if you have development programs designed for each of those and design them from scratch through to fully competent with different stages in each, then you can then begin to apply those to all the people you've got in the business as well. So people can then look at where they are along this model that you've created for new entrants, and it can help really inform everybody's development plan. But then in that instance, if somebody decides partway through a development program that they want to stop, and actually they've decided that this is a job role that they really want, then you've already got it there. You're not having to design ad hoc, because if we're doing that on the hoof, then it's a lot harder to actually get ahead of the curve. And then that's when people get bored, disgruntled, start looking elsewhere. Recruiters come in, and this is one of the biggest challenges to recruiting in our profession. People will say to me, well, if I spend all that money, they might leave anyway. And the risk is that they'll go off and they'll take all of this great training we've given them and go and use it somewhere else. It's the firm's job to work really hard at keeping those people. And so having really clear structures in place is a great way of doing that.
Yeah. And I must say this next slide is absolutely my favorite. You and I quickly spoke about this last night. And this is a great design, by the way. It really supports what we're going to talk about now, and that's creating a learning outcomes matrix, which is important because what are we trying to achieve at the end of the day? How do we measure whether we have in fact achieved that? So hopefully people are getting the image there at the top left. But talk to us about this learning matrix or this outcomes matrix that's required.
Absolutely. My heart sang when I searched in Canva for matrix and those 2 pictures popped up, Francois. I've got to say it was that had to go in. But yeah, this is for me really important, is that we create the DNA of the financial planner that you want somebody to be, or the power planner, or whatever it is. For each job role, we'll oftentimes have role profiles and job descriptions, but they're quite high level. If you are to break down everything that a financial planner needs to know from a knowledge, skill, and behavior perspective, then invariably when I do this with a firm, what I come out with is around about 250 different points that they need to either know from a knowledge point of view, to be able to do from a skill point of view, or forms of behavior that we want them to instill, really. And so with any of those elements, if you know all of the things that need to be trained or learned, then you can easily see where somebody is, and you can also see what they need to do next to progress. Too many training plans are, here's our start point, this is what it looks like at the end, and there isn't the detail between. A learning outcomes matrix gives you every single piece of detail. And within that, you can even design in what good looks like. So you can say, this is something we need them to know. They will have demonstrated it by being able to do X. And at that point, then it means that people can then become empowered to manage their own progression. If they've got really good descriptors of what it is that they are expected to be able to do, even if they don't yet know how to do that, they know what's required in achievement. Now that takes some time to put together, but once it's there, it's a real tool for empowerment.
And does it have to be like 250 things, or is it possible for a smaller business to have a simpler matrix, or is there just one matrix?
I think the matrix is based on the job role itself. And so ultimately, when you think about a financial planner, they always come out at over 200. When I work with a firm and we look at, right, what are the things you would want your financial planner to know, to be able to do, and to behave like, then when we bring that together in what is a complicated job role, then it comes out about that number. Paraplanner, maybe slightly fewer, because there are maybe different elements to the knowledge side of things. With administrator, they may be a little smaller again, oftentimes. But ultimately, when we think about each time that we look at a job, if you think about any activity of any sort, think about what we need to know when we drive a car. If we think of all the data points and all the learning outcomes you need to have when you drive a car, one of them is how to get into the car. And we learn that if we've never driven or seen a car before, we first of all have to learn that there's this thing called a key, and this key that we press. Now, some of these things might seem really obvious because many of us on the call, in fact, probably most of us drive. But when you're brand new to a profession and somebody says, right, we have a regulator and the regulator does this, and here's the rule book and it's 9,000 pages, which elements of that do we need them to know and which elements of that aren't important? If we can clarify that, and if we can make that something that they can work towards themselves independently of input, because we give them good examples of what good looks like, then it all begins to work itself. Now, it takes some time to put that together. It might take a week or two to really get into that and build it for yourself. But ultimately, if you've got that, then it's there for life. You just need to tweak it, and you've got what is essentially the DNA map of your ideal financial planner, paraplanner, administrator, whatever it might be.
Yeah, awesome. So now we've got this, we know where we're working towards, everything that we need to achieve by the end. But then obviously we need the training material or the content. And there's obviously a couple of ways to go about this. And this is to create your own to sort of satisfy the need. Or the other option is then to research and select outsource options for this. So let's briefly touch on that, Adam.
Yeah, and this is where the matrix really helps, because if you've got all of those key learning outcomes laid down, then it's very easy to think, right, now, how do we actually teach somebody that? Can we do it in-house, or do we need to outsource it? So it might be that you want one of your job roles to be able to use Excel really efficiently in particular areas, maybe Excel lookup or something like that. And so how would you go about delivering training for that? Is that an online module that's available on YouTube? So go and source it. And if it's free on YouTube, then you point them to that. And that becomes part of the development plan. If it's actually third-party training that you want to put in place, then it's there. If you've got an Excel champion in your business, then maybe they need to go and spend half an hour with that person as part of their development. If they actually arrive and they're really good at that particular thing, then you can tick that off if they can demonstrate it. So you also have a method of demonstrating it. But then within your design, in terms of what the program looks like, you should be looking at what can we deliver in-house, What do we need to outsource that we can find for free? And then what do we need to outsource that we might need to pay for or bring in specialists? Wherever possible, of course, choose those specialists wisely and do the right due diligence on that. But then you've got something that is always there. Now, it can always be reviewed. You can replace the specialists and bring different specialists in, but it means that you know what is particularly going to need to be in-house and what skills you'll need to maintain in-house to do that. If your Excel champion, for argument's sake, leaves the business, then actually you might need to start outsourcing it. So it breaks it down into nice modular chunks. Now, if you haven't designed a job role matrix and those learning outcomes matrix, then you can go off a more simple role profile or a job description that can at least be a starting point to this, to think, right, what training do we need? But just think about the training that goes into an induction, onboarding somebody. You've got HR, you've got health and safety, you've got money laundering, financial crime stuff, you've got data protection, you've then got how to use the basic systems, you've then got all of the other internal policies of the organization. That in itself is quite a big task. Who in the organization is going to do that? How are you going to welcome somebody so that they begin to feel comfortable? Because as soon as they feel comfortable, they can begin to be productive and valuable to your business. If every day feels like their first day because they haven't yet been told all of these things that they need to know, then that can be a real challenge. And again, this is how we lose good quality people from the profession, because they just get disgruntled and begin to look elsewhere.
Yeah, so important. I recently chatted to one of our clients is a bigger FSP, and looking at how do we get there, because up until now it was easy to sort of handle the onboarding process and the training that goes with that, for example. But now we're sort of talking about how do we almost, which part of that can almost be automated or self-directed. So it's all these kind of conversations to see what fits your particular business, and it's not just a one size fits all and this is the way. Again, like this is sort of the full-on approach, and then which aspects is going to be most valuable. And something that's definitely always valuable, and something that we've been doing a lot and in the past I've dealt with a lot, is completing a gap analysis with the trainee. Because it's one thing to understand all the outcomes that you want to achieve, but then on the other hand, how do we understand what the gaps are and what do we train? Do we want to waste time on things where there is no gap to reiterate and reaffirm those? Or do we want to make sure that the training program is customized so that you address the gaps for the trainee?
Absolutely, and this can be an abridged version of, or an abridged process to that more complicated creation of that learning outcomes matrix. So you could just go straight to a gap analysis and pick out maybe a smaller number, 50 or 60 key things that you want your financial planner to be able to demonstrate. And a simple gap analysis tool will then give that ability to self-analyze, but also ability for feedback from a line manager to look at where somebody is. And we've designed a simple one that everyone will be able to access at the end. I think you'll be telling people about that at the end, won't you, Francois? And we've designed one here just to demonstrate how that might look on a 1 to 5 scale. So somebody will look at the particular requirement in the gap analysis and then rate themselves on a 1 to 5. They can have a conversation with their line manager, decide whether they both agree at that score. And then if it's considered an important element that is business critical, that needs to be developed, then they can actually then design the training around that. But also to keep in mind that on any gap analysis, you may not be very good at it, but it might not be important or business critical at that time. And I'm a big exponent of, where possible, where it isn't business critical, to simply develop the real skills of your people. I always use the Usain Bolt analogy. I imagine Usain Bolt was great at, or at least better than me at, a lot of sports at school. But at some point, his coach probably said, Usain, stop doing shot put. You're a really good runner. We're going to make you a really great specialist runner. And off it went. You wouldn't spend all day long trying to turn Usain Bolt into a decathlete. So we need to think about that with our teams. Who are the people who are really great at 1 or 2 things, and let's really develop them to be exceptional in those. Make sure we've covered all the other areas from a business critical point of view, that they're competent, but let's get them being really awesome at the things that they've already started being good at.
Yeah, so important. And then I guess that the other thing is then obviously putting together a training schedule and setting some benchmarks. Is benchmarks a nicer word for deadlines or goal dates, if you will? But I mean, why is this so important?
It's about accountability, and ultimately it's accountability on both parts. It's accountability on the part of the trainee, but also on the part of the company. It's so easy to let the development of your team slide if you get really busy. The business needs and the customer needs will always take precedence, but there are certain things that are absolute red lines that you should not cross when it comes to developing your people. One of them is your one-to-ones. Set dates and times for one-to-ones, and unless the building is burning down or there is something that means that you really can't do that one-to-one in that building on that day, make it the most important part of your day when you've scheduled a one-to-one with one of your team, because that individual really feels it if you bump that back, if you change it in the schedule, if you miss it, if you're late to it. It's the one time, maybe 2 or 3 times a year, sometimes as much as 4, but not all that often, that we sit down with each individual team member. We give them feedback, and people crave feedback, and they want to be able to give you feedback as well. So these timeframes and these benchmarks, some of them should really be absolute. But then others, if we're setting benchmarks and scheduling, then we give target to the trainee, and the trainee can then be accountable to that and can look to work toward that. And so it gives both parties some accountability. That's really important.
And Adam, I guess there's a couple of things that we didn't have time to sort of touch on before I get to sort of the tail of this. And something that people just need to maybe also just think about is, I think part of this building the financial planner that you really want for your business, there's a couple of things that's sort of missing here, and I don't want us to get into it. I just want to mention them very quickly. The one is obviously recruitment. It means recruiting the best possible candidates right from the start, so that you have the best possible chance of achieving the goals that you have set for your business. So that's the one part. The other thing that one needs to consider as part of this entire process is the motivation that is built into this. And this is maybe something that we can talk about in a different session, but also important to understand, there are certain things that is expected by people we employ, and that those things where traditionally we may think these are our motivations, like paying them well, those are just things that they expect. There are other things that actually drives their motivation. And it's critical that throughout this process, we hold their hands, we support them, we encourage them, we motivate them to keep them going, because this is not a 1-month process. This is quite a several-year process usually. So just something that I wanted to add on. And then obviously now at the end, like all of this is very important, to do it up to this point, but then reviewing progress regularly and watching out for drift. When I see the word drift, I immediately think of, I don't know, Fast and Furious. So what are we talking about?
Yeah, I think it's really important to put in touch points for a review. But one of my favorite things is actually having a progression ladder. But not a progression ladder in the sense that so many firms implement a progression ladder, in as much that we go from job role A to job role B to job role C and move through different jobs. You can actually have progression ladder in terms of levels of competency in a role right the way through that one role. And so when you think about any job role within a business, then there are the core competencies, maybe start at level 1 of a progression ladder. And that might include some qualifications, it might not. Level 2 might be actually assisting other members of the team, maybe doing a little bit of training, attending meetings, being more responsible. Level 3 might be more of a role that's like the right-hand person to the senior management and the board. Level 4 would be senior management, board director type level. But you can design a progression ladder that has lots of different key learning points and key outcomes in each of the stages, and then maybe just pick 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 from each, something like that, but a number that somebody has to achieve, but maybe they don't have to achieve them all. before they can move to the next. And in doing so, what you can create is something that really helps people with motivation, even if they're staying in the job role that they're in, because we want to feel that we're being recognized for our gains in competency. So create something that actually can be reviewed where you can applaud people for making those gains in competency. They'll feel great about the job that they do, because motivation is always about recognition. It's about actually achievement. It's being able to be given more responsibility and actually then achieve more for the organization. People will be highly motivated in the job roles they're in without needing to move. So, none of what we've talked about today is new advanced rocket science or anything like that, but these are the things that we see financial planning firms not doing brilliantly. We get very wrapped up in regulation. We get very wrapped up in training and competence, so compliant regulation. And actually, what we sometimes forget is that these are people who are motivated by the same things as everybody else.
It's almost like, we always look for the silver bullet, the golden bullet, I don't know, the crypto bullet maybe today, but we're looking for that something special that's going to make it different. But there's these basic principles and rules that we just need to follow. And it comes down to the execution, as you say. How well do we actually see it through? How well do we go through the process in order to make sure that what we do for ourselves and for the people that we employ is actually the best for the business and for them? And it's not taking the time. It's looking for things off the shelf. It's looking for things that are just standard. And let me just go to a product providers training, for example, or let me just do, and those things are built for one size fits all. And that's where we miss to get that efficiency and the effectiveness that we're really, really after. And I think that for me is what stands out. So it's doing the basics extremely well, which really makes sense. Now, as we promised, there is obviously a download available, and I will share it in the chat as well. But there's the link to go and download your example gap analysis. And oopsie, I took it away. Sorry, let me just go down here and put it in the chat. There you go. So in the chat, there's a direct link for you to download the slide, not the slides, the actual gap analysis example. So it is in an Excel spreadsheet format, so you can just go and download it there. And yeah, so I don't know, let's have a look quickly at some questions. There are like 3 or so questions that has come through. Mark is asking a question, and I know the answer to this, but keen, Adam, for you to jump in as well. He asks, is mentorship factored into this route? And it's absolutely, because when we talk about training, a big part of training is obviously, I mean, if you think about somebody playing golf, it's sort of, people can read up on golf. You can read books about how to hold the club, what you need to do, sort of how you need to stand, how far the ball needs to be, where the ball needs to be, depending on the club you're using, all those kind of things. But unless there's somebody there coaching you, guiding you, observing what you're doing, giving you feedback, really using what you've learned is almost an impossible task, or it's going to take you very, very long to figure out what you're doing wrong, why the ball is fading to the right or drawing to the left. So obviously assuming you're right-handed when you play golf, but those things are, I mean, that answer is an absolute yes. It is absolutely factored into that. And I think, Adam, when you spoke about the one-on-ones as well, understand who needs one-on-ones. We didn't even get into the different learning styles and things that needs to be considered as well. But there's a whole host of things that go with this.
Yeah, Francois, I think it's really important though with mentorship. Mentorship is giving your experience to another person. And that is really important because, if we design elegant structures around the development program for your team, then your mentorship should be built into the structure as well as your actual presence, because you're not always going to be able to be there. But one of the key things is to design touch points, to design those elements that are really important. And I'll just touch on this really briefly. I'll be as quick as I can because I know we're short of time. But oftentimes we'll find mentors are shadowing trainee financial planners. And how many times have we all been in a meeting where we've been interrupted by somebody who's been shadowing us? And that in itself can be a real challenge because you haven't quite got to where you were expecting to get to before your supervisor, your mentor has cut in. because you're not quite doing it at the speed at which they might. And that can really undermine the confidence of a trainee. So mentors beware. One of the key things that you can do to protect against that is to create what I call waypoints, to create the points in the meeting that you agree with your trainee that they are going to hit, and to both agree that the mentor will not interrupt you, providing A, you're not saying something that's technically incorrect, or B, you are hitting those touch points. What that means is once you've got those waypoints in place, then as a trainee, you can actually be yourself. You don't have to follow the script of your mentor word for word. You don't have to be a shadow copy of your mentor. You can be authentic. And that's how we build trust with our clients, is through authenticity. So getting those waypoints agreed, those things that actually make it a meeting of your firm, and the things that you always want to talk to a client about, being really clear with your mentee, your trainee, what those are, will free them up to be themselves within that framework.
Nice. Cool. Next question from Jacques Retief. Hello, Jacques. How does the financial planner matrix, the 250 components, that learning outcomes matrix that we spoke about, compare to other professions? Do we have any idea?
I haven't built one for other professions, but I imagine it will, these are things that I build from the ground up. And so ultimately we have standard things, don't we? We have all the things a regulator expects a financial planner to be competent in. But then there are all the firm specific things, and different firms have different ways of doing things. But if you think about any role that has complexity, then it's likely to have at least 200 learning outcomes in it. And we just do them all day long, just subconsciously. We're not really aware that we're doing them, and we become really competent at it over time. But when you break it down, if you've got to teach somebody from scratch how to be a financial planner, how many individual elements of knowledge are they going to have to do? Now, we wrap up the knowledge about pensions into one. We don't break down every individual piece of pensions knowledge that they need. We say, do they have the relevant knowledge of pension savings and investments? And we let the regulator deal with the details of that in terms of what the exam structure is. But then there are things in your firm that will be specific to your firm. Can they operate the client management system? Do they know how to do X, Y, and Z? And so when you add all those things together, it's easily a couple of hundred things. I imagine for brain surgeons and airline pilots, it's maybe a few more.
Yeah, specifically. Cool stuff. Then Andre, hello Andre Jansen van Vieren. Ja, ek is reg. So one should just follow a normal job development program, nothing different from any other position. I don't think I would agree with that. Maybe there's a fair amount that's the same, but there's always something unique.
If I may come in there, though, I think actually I do take Andre's point that actually it isn't rocket science. We shouldn't be looking to redesign things that have been established by really great quality learning development specialists over years. These things are in design theory already, but we don't implement them very well in our profession often. That's the thing. We get busy and we spend our whole time focusing on clients and getting new assets under management and all the other things, and we can really easily forget our people. So what I'm saying is design well at the beginning, take the time to do it so that as much of it as possible holds people to account, is automated, and empowers your trainee to go and actually do their own training and actually do their learning themselves for as much as you can. That will then make it far more, it will give it that stickability.
Yeah, and then I see Mel. Hello, Mel. Nice to see you. Yeah, she's sneaking in a very important comment here. And I know of some of the FSPs or financial planning practices here in South Africa. Actually going to visit one this afternoon. They are already having something in this vein, but it's not a standard practice in our profession. And she says that legal and accounting profession make it compulsory to do articles. It would be great to look at what the training entails in terms of a roadmap. We should have that in place for our paraplanners. It's like a paralegal, and that's 100% correct. I think, in some sense, a paraplanner should know more than a paraplanner, but it's usually that client engagement thing that's missing. But also there's some paraplanners who are very involved in engagement with clients. Some are just behind the scenes. So again, it depends on the individual as well as the business. But anyway, time our industry starts working on this and only allowing a graduate financial planner to practice after they have fulfilled the paraplanner role for a period of time. It's hectic.
I don't object to that at all, I've got to say. And it's an interesting point from Mel, because we in the UK we have the Next Gen Planners training contract, which was based entirely over the types of training contracts that are designed in the legal profession. So it was the first of its kind in the UK to learn from that and take from how the legal profession structure. And that's a lot of what I'm sharing here today are the techniques that we include in that in the UK. But they are things that you can design into your business from scratch, most definitely.
Awesome. Right. So just before we go, just a last call. I will quickly post it here in the chat again, just the download link. We will also include it in the thank you email at the end, which only goes out tomorrow this time. But you will get the link to download this as well as a link to the recording. And then just as I mentioned on PROpulsion Pro, as you know, the community that we have, we are sort of, course, part of this whole training program is also support with exams. And we are launching a very exciting initiative for those attempting their PCE exam in Feb 2022. And there's going to be support and help, which is complimentary to members. People who are not members will have to pay for that, but for members, you'll have complimentary access to that. So more info will follow on that definitely in due course. Adam, just a huge thank you from my side. Thank you for your time, guys. For everyone that stuck around, most of everybody that attended live today has stuck up with 10 minutes over time. Thanks to the questions. Thanks for the amazing questions, comments, and input. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us at this time of day. Thank you for all your support and that. So from my side, from Adam, thank you so much.
Thank you for everybody, and hopefully see you soon.
Fantastic. Guys, have a fantastic afternoon. We'll see you back for the next one.